About 3 years ago, when a friend of mine recommended me Legend of the Northern Blade, I just waved it off because from the way they were describing the manhwa, it just sounded like any stereotypical revenge fantasy, as my friend was going on about how the main character is really cool and he gets revenge on these really strong guys who betrayed his dad. To me, this didn't sound like the type of story to have any depth, self awareness, or analytical value. However, after having read the manhwa, of course, of my own volition, I realized how wrong I was. The story follows Jinmu Wan, the son of the Northern Heavenly Sect leader, the Northern Heavenly Sect being a faction built via the support and combined forces of everyone in the mainland, so that they could have a special force to protect the mainland from the Silent Knight, who to the mainlanders are an evil and nefarious criminal organization who want to do nothing but pillage and destroy the mainland, emphasis on to the mainlanders part. Now, after years of back and forth between the Northern Heavenly Sect and the Silent Knight, it seemed the Silent Knight was gone for good. Hence, without their old enemy, the mainland now had an extremely strong military force who didn't have anyone to point their might at. Fearing the Northern Heavenly Sect, especially its leader, the powers in control of the mainland schemed together and coerced many influential members of the sect to frame Jinmu Wan's father as a traitor. They then forced him to disband the sect and commit seppuku, only leaving Jinmu Wan alive because of his father's request and because it would sully their quote-unquote just cause if they were to target an innocent child. Just like that, the Great Northern Heavenly Sect fell to ruins. Years later, Jinmu Wan is living a torturous life, if you can even call it that, where his every action and movement is being monitored via goons sent by the powers who disbanded the sect, to see if Jinmu Wan harbors any resentment and or is practicing any secret martial arts. Despite their efforts to make his life a living hell, Jinmu Wan stubbornly persists and even manages to become proficient in blacksmithing and a secret martial technique which he deciphered through the architecture of the sect. Now, although he wasn't able to practice the martial art due to being constantly monitored, Jinmu Wan was able to brand it into his memory so that he could remember everything about it, which was a smart decision as after an incident with the Forgotten Silent Knight, some triangles, and an incredibly tragic dude, the sect was destroyed and Jinmu Wan was able to fake his own demise so that he could train in secret. In seclusion, Jinmu Wan was able to train and improve his martial skills. That is, of course, with the support of Uncle Huang, who delivers food and supplies to Jinmu Wan. In the past, Uncle Huang was just a low-ranking soldier within the sect. However, Jinmu Wan's father's kindness had touched Uncle Huang so much that he remained firmly loyal to the sect even after its fall. Hence, he does everything in his power to look out for the young boy, making sure to routinely visit him in secret and help in any way that he can. That is, until Uncle Huang's visits suddenly come to an end. Worried for Uncle Huang's well-being, Jinmu Wan, after years of isolation, finally came out of training to find his uncle. Unbeknownst to Jinmu Wan and anyone within Miram, this decision would dramatically alter the fate of the world, as Jinmu Wan is forced to come face to face with the many hidden and unsavory truths of the world, whether it be the evil schemes, conspiracies, and machinations of the powers that be, or the unsavory history of the world and how it came to be. All of this unfolding because someone decided to mess with Uncle Huang. Now that I've given a basic overview of the story, I want to address the strengths of the novel and some areas where I was wrong. First and foremost, depth. At first, I thought this story would lack any depth and be like any other revenge fantasy. However, to my pleasant surprise, the story is actually much more than that, as it delves into pretty deep topics that have real-world significance, like how governments use fear-mongering tactics to not only distract people from issues, but to justify wars and needless acts of violence. Yeah, these are some pretty interesting topics that I don't see being addressed often, especially within this medium. Now, this is not to say that the manhwa is just a boring speech about how violence is bad and the government is controlling you. No, in fact, anyone with eyes and the ability to read will testify as to just how good the manhwa is. I'm just saying that if you wanted to dig in, there's some real meat to chew. As for depth in terms of our protagonist, Jinwoo-won isn't some single-minded sociopath, hell-bent on revenge. Instead, our protagonist actually starts off as someone who wants to just live his life and move on from the past, as he knows deep down that the path of revenge isn't the life that his father would have wanted for him. However, after the incident with Uncle Hwang, Jinwoo-won uncovers various truths about the world, which forces him into action, as Jinwoo-won feels that he can't just sit back and let what he sees as evil reign unchecked. And of course, throughout the story, not everyone agrees with Jinwoo-won's vision of justice and or his actions. This leads to multiple instances within the story where Jinwoo-won is being confronted about his beliefs and actions, whether it be about his philosophy, violence, and maybe even his hypocrisy, which I really love and respect, because as opposed to what I had expected, the manhwa was not just about cool fights and battles, but also a clash of ideologies and philosophies between strong and respectable characters. Let me repeat, strong and respectable characters, because these people are actual characters and not just stepping stones so that the main character can aura farm. And while we're on this subject, I may as well move on to the next strength of the manhwa, which is the supporting cast, because almost all of the supporting cast or side characters have their own unique strengths, personalities, and uniquenesses that not only make them likable, but also make them a boon to the protagonist, because unlike other stories where the protagonist is the strongest, most intellectual, most talented, and most handsome, this story understands that most great things require a team effort. So within this story, almost everyone is given their moment to shine, and it's not just a one-man show, which I find incredibly refreshing, because so many stories, especially within this medium, are afraid of taking the spotlight away from the protagonist for even one moment, resulting in a story where the protagonist is literally flawless and might as well be the second coming of Christ. Now, alongside these strengths, another area that the manhwa excels in is its art, which is just so fluid and unique. This is most evident in the fight scenes that are practically jumping out at you because of how energetic and figurative they are. Even though some character designs and choices are, let's just say, unconventional, overall, I still enjoy the art because I much prefer that my manhwa has a unique style rather than looking like any other manhwa on the market. And if you really don't like the triangle aspect of the characters, as the story progresses, the shoulder issue is much less prevalent. All of that being said, I do have some criticisms about the manhwa because it's not perfect, my main gripe being the pacing towards the end. I just wish the manhwa took some more time to really delve into an issue that was being posed towards the end of the manhwa, as I felt that the way it was resolved was very rushed and didn't give readers enough time to feel the appropriate emotions for what our protagonist was going through, as all it took for the issue to be resolved was literally 2 dialogue boxes. Other than this, I was also not a big fan of how a certain important-ish side character's whole personality was about having a crush on our protagonist and being rejected. I thought that this would eventually develop into something else with her overcoming her rejection and moving on, but that never really happens, as the story just ends and I'm left here with a poor taste in my mouth. And yeah, that's about it in terms of my criticisms. Other than these 2 things, I thoroughly enjoyed my time reading the manhwa, which is why I properly thanked my friend who had recommended me the manhwa. Overall, if you're looking for an action-packed manhwa and don't really care about messaging or depth, then this manhwa is probably a solid 9 out of 10. However, if you're looking for something meaty that you can chew into and really analyze, then I'd have to bump the rating down to 7 out of 10 because of my 2 main critiques. Anyways, that was my review of The Legend of the Northern Blade. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys in the next video.